Greetings, my name is Dr. Glenn Smith, and for the past 40 years, I've been an urban missiologist living in the city of Montreal. My practice is primarily in large Canadian cities, but also cities here in my own province of Quebec, and then in large French-speaking cities of la Francophonie, including Cap-Haïtien and Port-au-Prince in Haiti. I was the executive director of Christian Direction for 35 years. You would recognize us as a community development, community engagement organization that partners with the church for the spiritual and social transformation of adolescents, because we have a bias for kids, their families, but including the neighborhood. Today, I'm the chief advocate of the ministry. My wife and I are also pastors of our Missional Communities ministry of our church here in the city of Montreal. We're a multi-site congregation and we own no property. And so we know that if we want to flourish and grow and continue to plant sites, we need to have a robust small group ministry, missional communities, that bear witness to Jesus and all of his teachings in word and deed, but at the same time are engaged locally in that spiritual and social transformation. I'm also the Dean of the Faculty of Practical Theology, a partnership between the Institut de Théologie pour la Francophonie, which is accredited by Laval University in Quebec City, and with the Presbyterian College at McGill. Now, to consider our theme for today, holistic and locally present engagement in the long term. Let's begin with context, and I'll use mine. Now, you've probably read this about the city of Montreal since confinement began in our province on March 13th. Montreal and Quebec have been incredibly hit by the coronavirus. In fact, as of this morning, there are over 54,000 cases of the virus right here. That's 63% of the Canadian total. In fact, 64% of all of the deaths in Canada have taken place in Quebec. You see, Montreal and Quebec has an earlier spring break than the rest of North America. And so because of our close ties with Florida, New York City, and France, when people came back at the beginning of March, Montreal became what I affectionately refer to as a petri dish. And all of a sudden, the numbers have exploded. Here's what it looks like contextually. Montreal represents 5% of Canada's population, but we've had 40% of the deaths. And tragically, better than 80% of those deaths have taken place in long-term seniors' residence. Montreal has 3 times the number of people in senior citizen residence of other provinces in Canada, for example, Ontario. It's a tragic ethical dilemma that we have to face. Now, because of our theme, because of this holistic and locally present engagement in the long term, let's just do a brief reflection about why missiology is so important. You see, missiology is the exegetical, the theological, and the cultural study about the mission of God in the world and the ensuing ministries of the church in her context. So for that reason, missiology is often referred to as interdisciplinary. It's interdisciplinary in terms of its reflection and its action. It takes into consideration things like cultural studies, holistic community transformational development theory and practice. It includes a critique of the past. It engages contextualization, and it includes those strategies that move the people of God forward in their local situation in mission, evangelization, church planting, discipleship, scriptural engagement. So when we shape the discussion about long-term and present engagement, we want to pursue this reflection contextually, seeking to relate, for example, in my situation, urban geography and mission. You see, urban geography analyzes the reasons for the spatial differences of human activity in urban areas. But in missiology, we want to have a more adequate understanding of the apostolic mission of the church while remaining faithful to the exegetical task of understanding the mind of the biblical writer. But this fusion of urban geography, apostolic mission, understanding the mind of the biblical writer is fraught with potholes. And I can't think of a more appropriate metaphor for our North American cities. And the biggest pothole of all right now is this invisible virus. So specifically, holistic and locally present engagement in the long term. I think there's two specific issues that I sense God is saying to me and to the church, and that includes then three applications. Let me begin with the two issues. You see, pandemics are about public health, not about individual health. And one can only grasp what is happening across North America and in our cities if we grasp how social systems work. So the COVID-19 means that we must be better students of social systems. And as followers of Jesus in our ecclesial communities, we need to grasp how social systems, public health works. I think long term, we need to grasp how those systems work, and we need to be training our congregations on both how to understand them and then to volunteer in them. Now, the second thing I think the church is saying to us, and this is one thing that has really struck me. You see, this confinement should remind us that we need to get our structures right while things are going well, so that in times of turbulence, we can adapt quickly. Now, with those two principles in mind as we look to the future, here are three applications that I think are really important. The first application is that we need small, nimble, missional communities. This is where the church needs to get far more serious. A missional community works on the basis of a triangle. Picture a triangle in your mind. A triangle where this group of 3 to 12 people who would meet every other week, they would live the life of the Holy Spirit in community. They would be interacting regularly with the scriptures to understand the mind of the biblical writer. But they would make a robust commitment to understanding their community and getting engaged in their community. These are the groups that are where the action will take place. Many of you that are listening read about missional communities. I've been struck during the pandemic how many congregations across Canada have contacted me to say, can you get us some more training on how to do it in our church? We got to get it right when things are going well, because in turbulent times, you don't build a ship on the ocean. Now, the second application, again, something we do, but for the long term, it becomes much more important. We need to take local, borough, community, neighborhood much more seriously. I've been fascinated with my congregation during the pandemic. We had 75 small groups, missional communities going in our church. Within the space of 5 days, we were to get the vast majority of them, 92%, online through various social media platforms. During this confinement, we've added 125 people in our small groups and are training even more. But the point being, these are the groups that get involved in the local neighborhood. They're volunteering in clinics, in long-term seniors residence. These are the people that are delivering food. These are the people that are bearing witness to Jesus and all of his teachings in word and deed. These are the people that are thinking about multiplying sites and multiplying groups. You take the local seriously. And then the third and final application is this. I wonder in the long term that if we continue to be so Sunday-centric, that we might lose the big picture about what God is doing and joining him. And I think in the long term, we need to keep asking that question. Are we so Sunday-centric that we've lost the big picture of what God is doing and joining him? During this pandemic, I went back and read the writings of Saint Cyprien. He was writing from Carthage in 250 when the pandemic decimated his city. It was probably measles. In his little book on the mortality, he inspired himself out of the Sermon on the Mount, and particularly the last two antitheses at the end of chapter 5. And he said, we can't just take care of our own. We must take care of those in Carthage, and we must take care of those who might hate us. That's how we move the mission of God forward. So may God be with you. Be assured of my prayers for you. Have a great day.